Week 4, Day 2. Morning Nourishment. Philippians 1:20. My earnest expectation and hope is that in nothing I will be put to shame, but with all boldness, as always, even now Christ will be magnified in my body, whether through life or through death. Philippians 4:22. All the saints greet you, and especially those of Caesar's household. Philippians 3:9. And be found in him, not having my own righteousness. In Paul's bodily sufferings, Christ was magnified, that is, shown or declared great, shown to be without limitation, exalted, and extolled. His sufferings afforded him opportunity to express Christ in his unlimited greatness. Only Christ would he have magnified in him, not the law or circumcision. Philippians is concerned with the experience of Christ. To magnify Christ under any circumstances is to experience him with the topmost enjoyment. In 1:20 a number of expressions are related to Paul's statement that Christ would be magnified in him, with all boldness, as always, even now, in my body, whether through life or through death. Paul does not simply say with boldness, but says with all boldness. Then he specifically points out that Christ would be magnified in his body, even though his body was in chains, Christ would be magnified in his body. Moreover, Christ would be magnified whether through life or through death. This indicates that no matter what the circumstances were, Paul expected Christ to be magnified in him. Today's reading. The word magnify means to make something large to our sight. According to Ephesians 3, the dimensions of Christ, the breadth, length, height, and depth, are immeasurable. They are the dimensions of the universe. Although Christ is vast, extensive, and immeasurable, in the eyes of the Praetorium, the imperial guard of Caesar, Christ was virtually non-existent. However, Paul magnified Christ. He made him great before the eyes of others, especially before the eyes of those who guarded him in prison. As a result, some eventually turned to Christ. Evidence of this is found in Philippians 4:22, where Paul speaks of the saints of Caesar's household. Through Paul's magnification of Christ, even some in Caesar's household were saved. At the time of Paul's imprisonment, the Jews were despised by the Romans. The Romans were the conquerors, and the Jews were the conquered ones. Among these conquered ones there was a man named Jesus. Although he is great and most wonderful, in the eyes of the Romans he was nothing. But as Paul was held captive in a Roman prison, he magnified Christ, making him to appear great in the eyes of his captors. In our daily living we also should magnify Christ, making him great in the eyes of others. Where you work or go to school, people may look down on Christ. They may ridicule him and take his name in vain, in violation of the third commandment. Therefore, you need to let others see Christ not in a small way, but in the way of enlargement, of magnification. We should also magnify him at home. The parents of some of the young people may not believe in Christ, but rather may despise him. Hence, these young people must bear the responsibility to enlarge Christ before their parents. We need not simply the life within, but also the living without. Through the proper living, Christ will appear to be great in the eyes of others. Young people, let your parents see Christ's greatness in you. Paul says that Christ would be magnified in him whether through life or through death. In his living, Paul magnified Christ. This is to magnify him through life. As he was expecting to be martyred, he also magnified him. This is to magnify Christ through death. Thus, whether through life or death, Christ was magnified in Paul's imprisoned and chained body. Obviously, this is not mere doctrine, it is the genuine experience of Christ.